So, hello, everybody. I'm Barbara Camocini again. I'm from the design department of Politecnico di Milano, and I'm really glad to introduce the next guest. Her name is Annabel Pretty, and she's from New Zealand. So we are traveling a lot. So now we crossed the ocean. And hello, Annabel.
Hello, Barbara. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm really glad to see you finally. And I would like to shortly introduce you. Annabel Pretty is a senior lecturer at the School of Architecture, Unitec Institute of Technology in New Zealand, Auckland. She is also a leader, a discipline leader of the Master of Architecture professional program, and her activity is mostly focused on teaching in the master thesis students. Am I right? With
right.
The research, interesting research clusters area like social architecture and cultural and art architecture. So really contemporary and very important fields of knowledge. Thank you. I leave you the stage because I know that you would like to start with some images, if I'm right.
That's right. Thank you, Barbara. So
thank you.
I just wanted to show a few images from
Yes.
Auckland, New Zealand. And the issue that I was really interested in is that on the 25th of March to the 27th of April, we were in severe lockdown. And this happened, we were locked down a few days before. We went from level 2 to level 3 to level 4 quite quickly. And it was very interesting because we have our summer at the same time as Christmas, and Christmas Day, everything is very quiet on the street and nobody drives and nobody is around. And this is the same thing that happened when we went to lockdown level 4, is that we started to listen to what our government was telling us, which was stay in your bubble, and everybody had to stay within their family bubbles or the houses that they were living in, and that we were allowed to walk, but we had to keep the 2-meter rule. So one of the things that was very interesting was that everybody took this 2-meter rule to be more like, oh, let's keep 4 meters away from everybody. So it meant that everybody was walking in the middle of the streets. And it's so interesting walking in the middle of the streets because you see a different view. Suddenly your viewpoint is not the pathways anymore. Your viewpoint is from the middle of the road. And as I was walking down the middle of the road on my daily walk, I would see these power boxes. And I thought, this is so interesting. I've never seen them before. And so these power boxes are pretty much everywhere and they are exceedingly ugly. And so there I was walking down the street, keeping away from everybody else, keeping my 2-meter, more like 4-meter rule, and looking at these power boxes. And I was thinking about these power boxes, and I was thinking how the power boxes are basically a metaphor for internet. Because one of the things that we found was that we have undergraduate BAS students, Bachelor of Architecture Studies, and Master's students, and we found quite a number of our students didn't have internet access. And as I researched more, what it became apparent was that we actually have quite large numbers of master students and undergraduate students that don't have internet access. And within New Zealand, we have about 100,000 children with 0 internet access, which is actually quite a lot. And within the Auckland region, we have 21 districts, and 6 of those districts, the people in those districts, between 40 and 49% have 0 access to internet. Now, when this is a time when everything is predicated about being on the internet and having connectivity, if you don't have internet, it becomes a really, really big problem to try and teach people. So we call this either digital disadvantage or digital divide or digital exclusion. And it really became apparent to us that although the New Zealand government tried to give out Wi-Fi hubs and computers to students, they didn't come quick enough because we were only in lockdown for the 4 weeks, longer over the level 3 and level 2, but the really tight lockdown, the government put in the procedures to send these Wi-Fis and these computers out, but they didn't arrive in time because 4 weeks wasn't enough time. So we've got a situation where for us, within 3 days of going to lockdown levels 4, we were already into crits and reviews, and they worked really well for us with Zoom. But Zoom has gone from just a little bit under 700,000 users to 13 million users worldwide, which is huge. But if you don't have internet access, you can't do a critique for architecture. It is just not possible. And so this was the thing that we found that was really interesting. So yesterday, the Ofcom report came out from the UK, and it stated that 18 to 24-year-olds have spent around about 5 hours a day during their lockdown on a device of some description, which is fine if you have a device, but if you don't have internet, you're not connected, you're not entertained, and you're not educated. And so therefore you're digitally disadvantaged. And that's the thing that really interests me. So yeah, that's, as I was walking around during our lockdown, this is what I was really thinking about. So that's really kind of, I guess, my premise in a way to you, Barbara, is about this digitally disadvantaged and how, what do we do for our students? You know, how do we ameliorate this? What do we do to prevent them from being digitally disadvantaged? Is it just a New Zealand problem? I suspect not. I suspect that it's also a problem in many other communities as well.
Yes. Thank you for this introduction. I think it is we have the same problem in teaching and at many levels, not only university, as you were saying, also primary schools, primary level, and so on. And I know that the government tried to fill this gap, but it is quite difficult also because the families sometimes are one, 2 children, and they might have also parents working at home, so they might need 3 or 4 devices sometimes. So it is a matter of number of devices, and it is a matter of quality of connection. So it is it's not so easy. But I was thinking, yes, that now that the emergency is getting down, we are trying quite quick. I mean, I can't say quite quickly, but we are trying to blend the system to start again having some hour. We will do in September. We will start trying to mix a bit this system. But I was also worried about the lifestyle of people in general, apart from the teaching activity. I was surprised also about general needs that were connected to the use of internet, like going to the supermarket. We could no more going to the supermarket or to go to buy food. So it was easier who had the connection, because you could order online and you could find what you needed. So I had this impression my parents couldn't have this kind of facilities because they were not so familiar with it. So it was also not only a matter with the young people, I mean young students. It was a matter of economic, of course, opportunities, and also I would say a matter of diversity, or elderly people, or I mean talking about all when you were saying digital divide, and it is a kind of a social exclusion at one point. Yeah. So I think it is like that, and it made me think about the power. When you started with this idea, I mean, we didn't say that your word is power boxes. It was clear.
No, well, it was just I guess that's what we call them, and I'd never really seen them. And I was thinking, well, what are they called? Okay, so we don't have overhead power, so the power is underground. So these are the power boxes that gives us the power. But it's just kind of it's interesting that I was thinking about it, and also I was thinking the word power, because if you're not it's kind of a double entendre in a way. The power boxes give power to the people in the houses, and if you don't have that, then really it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So
yes, that what started seeing these. When I saw your word, I started thinking about the electric power and thinking about the connection as like a primary need, because when you are in a lockdown, it becomes like the electricity, like the opportunity to have light in your house, to use your appliances and so on. And I started thinking, and I wrote it to you, about the developing country when they have no electricity, no power. And I remember when we were preparing our Expo 2015, I was involved in research about the arid zones. And I was quite surprised thinking about the opportunity to have power, because, for example, if they have light in their houses, they can use they can increase the amount of hours in their daily life. So, for example, children and women can study or can do something else apart of working, because when there is the light, the sun shining, they have to work or to do what they need to do. But so they have no time to study, because when it is getting dark, you can't do anything. If you are a woman, you can't. For example, you can't cook in a proper way. You have to collect wood, and wood is not. It's quite precious in Arizona. So it is a huge problem, and I was in my mind comparing it to the use of internet in our lockdown. Without it, we had a lack in our relationship with our friends, with our parents. Sometimes we can't provide the food that we want. For example, we can't choose it freely, and so it is quite a serious issue. So I like your idea that electricity and connection is on the same level in two different environments. Of course, the situation is totally different in the environment.
I think you'll see lots of memes online about how Maslow's hierarchy has internet at the top now, rather, because if you're not connected with other people, it makes life really difficult. I mean, in our bubble, we had 3 and we're all adults, so it's relatively simple. But if you are 6 weeks or 4 weeks under lockdown and you can't go outside and you have no outside connection and you don't have any Wi-Fi and you don't have any connectivity, I think life would be actually pretty miserable. Whereas for us, we were pretty lucky in our bubble. We could have Netflix, we could watch YouTube, we could do all of those sorts of things. We could continue teaching. One of the things that we did do within the architecture school is that because we flipped online learning within 2 or 3 days, because of course our semester, we're just coming to the end of it now. And one of the questions that our institute asked all of the staff was, what's your Wi-Fi internet like? Because if it's no good, you can't teach at home, and we have to deal with that. And so that's actually quite a big problem. And so, we had this big list of, whose internet was good and whose was kind of so. And again, you're probably the same. But for us, when we are teaching and we have reviews or crits, and you have external people and you're hosting it and you've got 50 people on a Zoom, if you haven't got decent Wi-Fi, that's actually a big problem, a huge problem. Yeah.
Actually, what you're saying is strongly connected with our experience here, because to manage this kind of conference, we had, as you probably know, we had to make some trials, some of connection. Yes, and the organizers, I mean, the control room has a list of each of us with a kind of grade of our connection and how we are working with the cable, with the Wi-Fi, what kind of a Wi-Fi, where we are, how is the light, how is the connection. So it is quite the same approach, because actually we do that kind of conversation with our students. It is empowered conversation, of course, because we have to see their work and their drawings or their idea, their project. So it is again more engaging. But I think that we felt this issue also organizing this kind of event, because it has to change in a half an hour. So once you are you reach the proper level, you have to change guests. So everything should be perfect. And I think that it is almost the same with what you were saying. And also another thing that was interesting in your speech is this kind of I mean, the point of view of a person walking in the middle of a street. So a new perception of space. Or, I mean, that it is, I mean, I study spatial design, so it's something that I like very much in terms of approach. And, I felt that you have also, when you said you are working alone, let's say, because there is a big distance between you and the others. So you feel you feel a kind of new perception of the street. You see different things, and in my opinion, you see better a connection between one point and the other. You can feel better how it is structured. You have a new topology of the space, different connection. So I was thinking about layers, physical layers and virtual layers, because you are talking about connectivity.
That's right.
So I was thinking about these overlapping layers of perception of the space.
Well, I mean, in normal times, you would never walk down the street because it's far too dangerous. And so to be walking down the street and seeing a completely different viewpoint, and largely at the beginning of lockdown, everybody was super scared to be going anywhere near anybody else. So staying away from people was the best solution. But it's so interesting when, you know, you've got such as Henry Lefebvre talking about the production of space and the representation of space, and you've got Manuel Castells talking about this space of flows and how people move through spatial. And when you see something from a different perspective, it makes it very interesting, because it kind of realigns your daily life, which would normally be walking along the path and looking out towards the road or being very close to some of the houses, and suddenly you're seeing something different and you're interacting with the space in a different way. And I think that that's really interesting, and I think that that's something that's very defining for us about the lockdown, is that we could walk in the streets. And I know that there's numerous initiatives where they're putting bicycle ways now in Auckland, try so that bicyclists and pedestrians can take over the streets rather than cars taking over the streets. And I think that that urban activism, let's say, is really important, because we don't want cars to own the roads. We want people and bicyclists and people on scooters to own the roads, and it be a little bit more democratized, where at the moment we've got cars that own it and it's their space. And so one of the things about being in lockdown was that it became a little bit more democratized for other people to use it. And I think that that was really interesting as well. It kind of gave the power back to the people rather than the car drivers that had the power. So it comes back again to power boxes and who has the power and who cedes the power. And I think that's kind of quite interesting.
Yes, I think you touched a quite important topic dealing with the lockdown and after the lockdown. So what is happening now? And I was saying the same thing this morning because we felt a change in our towns, in our streets, in our environments when we had a lockdown, no cars, silence, no noise. And we felt that it was something, I mean, in the emergency, it was something good. And then I think that it fostered a process of changing the system of transport. Here in Milan, the mayor started to push to foster this idea of increasing the bicycle routes in town. I have to say, in an emergency, so without a proper project, probably with the weaknesses of it. But I think that people felt the necessity to change a behavior. But we have also the opposite risk, because due to the emergency, taking the public transportation is a risk, because you need to shorten the distance with the other person. So we before taking a bus or a tram or a train, we think better. We think if we really need it or not. So I think this is pushing people to take the car again. So after the lockdown, I felt that we had an increase of car, and we are, I read it also on the newspaper, we are nearly the situation that was pre-COVID emergency. So, I mean, we feel the need to change, but in the emergencies, we have an extra obstacle to that. So it has a double face. It pushes us to change, but then we have again fear that we feel the risk of the emergency. So I think that transportation is a good evidence of this double face or this risk and wish to change, starting from the bottom, from people behavior. So we can do something for that. We can be part of this process, but we have our own obstacles.
Whereas we're quite lucky, during lockdown, they allowed the buses to continue, but it was only for emergency workers, but they only allowed half the number of people on the bus, and they could only enter by the back door. Really not many people use the bus. But what's interesting is that we have terrible traffic jams here in Auckland. It's really, traffic is a big deal, but the traffic has not yet gone back up to where it was before lockdown, because people are still working at home, and they're still in that moment of, well, I can do one day at home and then I can do one day at work. And so everyone's, let's say, time shifting, so that they're not going in on Monday and working Monday to Friday. They might work a Tuesday and a Thursday, and the rest they work at home. And that's actually been really much better, because the traffic is not nearly as bad as it used to be. So that's actually really a good thing. But yes, I do understand that the fear of going on public transport is really a reality for many people, and it's a really difficult thing to overcome.
I was listening you talking, and I'm a bit, I would like to ask a bit something that is a bit off topic. So what is the experiences in New Zealand about the emergency? Because I know that your experience was quite different from ours, probably. So I was curious to know your point of view, also from a designer, an architect, and but also as a person who live in a public space, who live in her house. So as a person.
Well, I think we're very lucky because we can control the border, and that makes a huge difference. And so most of continental Europe, you can't control your borders, and so people can still move. So by closing all the airplanes down and saying nobody's allowed in unless you are a citizen, basically that kind of made it a little bit easy for us. But unfortunately, in the last, let's say 5-10 days, they have not been testing people that have come into the country properly. And some people have been let out into the community, 51 of them who haven't been tested. And this is actually, everyone's very shocked and very upset about this moment, because they just can't believe that the government wouldn't test them. I mean, it seems ridiculous that you wouldn't test them. And so basically, up until all the lockdown, everybody perceived the New Zealand government as doing really well and closing the borders, everything perfect. And then as soon as people are coming in at the moment and they haven't been tested, they're supposed to be tested at day 3. And if they get a negative result, then they can leave after the 14 days. But about 50-something people weren't tested. And so there's a lot of anger at the moment about that, because people are fearful again. I suspect we won't have, there's been discussion about whether there would be what we call a trans-Tasman bubble, so a travel bubble between either New Zealand and Australia, or New Zealand and the Pacific Islands. Now, there's largely very little COVID-19 in the Pacific Islands, so in a way it would make better sense that we go in that direction. But there's still quite a lot of COVID-19 in Australia at the moment. So this is quite a, I think, I mean, my family in the UK, they have quite a different experience. Whereas the experience here is quite different, you know. And I think, although they're both island nations, they've dealt with it very differently. So we are lucky that we do have a female prime minister, and she's, you know, the mantra has always been, be kind. And, you know, this is the kind of the big thing, stay humble and be kind. I think like everybody is pretty good about that. But I think we have the same dramas as everybody else. You know, there's lots of businesses that have gone bankrupt. We were very lucky, in the government gave everybody stayed with their wages all the way through, and they will stay with their wages. So although some people will lose their jobs, they still have been paid all the way through the lockdown. So for us, they've put that sort of support in place, and I think it makes a huge difference, whereas I think other countries maybe have not been able to do that. One of the things that our Prime Minister says all the time is that we're a family of 5 million. This is kind of the way that we've kind of viewed things. So it's quite different to being in Italy or being in the UK, where they have so many more people, So
it's a totally different approach due to many different premises, probably number of people and the culture and things like that. I was well, we have 3 minutes, 2-3 minutes. So I was listening your last sentences. I was thinking again about connectivity and connection, because also the idea of being able to communicate the emergency. When you say our government said that we are family, we are community, and it is another way of connect people, feeling. As I know that you part of your studies are about social architecture. I mean, the relationship between people. I think that this idea of communicate the direction to involve people in the guidelines, in the rules that you are choosing to lead a country or a community are really, really important. And in this emergency, probably can be important to be able to design also that kind of things.
Absolutely. And I think that our government did a lot of work with focus groups to work out what was a clear message, and the clear message which stay in your bubble, which is quite simple. It's, you know, your bubble is your group of people that you live with, whether it's in a flat or you're within your house. And so it's quite a simple message. Stay in your bubble. Okay, everyone stays in the bubble. You know, it's quite a simple thing. Whereas other countries, particularly in the UK, they've given such a mixed message. and it's difficult to untangle what you're supposed to do. And I think governments having clear design in their thinking about how to pass that message across is actually really, really important.
Okay, thank you. I think this is a perfect end of our conversation, and it is a clear message. Thank you very much. It was your presence here was precious, and I thank you very much for being here. And I hope we can meet again in the future, and maybe in another edition of this conversation. Thank you.
It's great. Thank you, Barbara. Very much
appreciated.
Bye
bye. So thank you very much. I hope it was interesting for everybody.